Title of this vodcast is Cell Signaling. You can put that as a heading in your notebook. And what we're really talking about when we talk about cell signaling is how different cells talk to each other. So there might be a reason for information from your heart to get to your stomach, so those heart cells have to talk to those stomach cells, and they are going to find a way to do that through basically different chemical mechanisms or messengers that travel between two different types of cells. So in this vodcast we're going to be discussing, well, how does that happen? First of all, the steps of the cell signaling pathway are: number one, receiving the message. So if the message is going from the heart to the stomach cells need to receive that message somehow. Number two, signal transduction, which is the changing of the message. So in order for the stomach cells to understand a message from the heart cell, the message has to be changed in some way to make it make sense to the stomach cells. And then finally, those stomach cells are going to have some sort of response to that message. We call that step 3, the cellular response. Obviously, the heart cells want the stomach cells to do something, and that response is the final step in cell signaling. All right, for this vodcast, I'm not going to go over a lot of information about each of these steps. Instead, you're going to do that on your own through a PowerPoint version of this that I've linked below this vodcast. So what I'm going to do in the remaining time of this vodcast is kind of take you through how you're going to go through that PowerPoint, what you're going to record, and how you're going to find the information that you need. So we're going to start by going through each of the steps that I just talked about: reception, signal transduction, and then the response. The information you're going to need to record about it from the PowerPoint, and how you do that, how you find that information. So the first thing you're going to see on the PowerPoint, which as I said is identical to this, is the heading that says reception, so you want to write that down. There are 4 different types of receptors on cells that we're going to discuss. So you're going to write each of those 4 different types down. But you're going to want to also leave some space between them, because for each of those different types of receptors you're going to answer 2 questions. What molecule does this receptor bind to? And then what is the action of the receptor? What does the receptor actually do once it binds to that molecule? How you're going to find that information is to this link that I'm going to attach in that PowerPoint. So you can't click on the link now because it's just a recording of the PowerPoint. But as I said, I put the PowerPoint right below this, so you should be able to link to it to find those answers. So in other words, after you've written down reception, 1 G protein, you're going to answer 2 questions for the G protein using this online simulation. What molecule does the G protein bind to? And what does the G protein do once it's bound to that molecule? Then you're going to write number 2, tyrosine kinase, answer the 2 questions using the simulation, so forth and so on for the remainder of the receptors. So that's step 1 of cell signaling. We're going to do the same thing with step 2, signal transduction. Write down the heading in your notebook. There are 3 types of what we call second messengers, which are the signal transducers. They change the signals for the cell. There's an online simulation which will answer 2 questions for you for each of the second messengers. What is the receptor from the previous page that we just talked about that the messenger works with? So this is the messenger here, cyclic AMP. Which type of receptor from before does the cyclic AMP actually work with? And then what is the action of the messenger? What does the cyclic AMP do? Oops. What does the cyclic AMP do once it gets a message from the receptor? Again, use the online simulation to figure that out. For the last step of cell signaling, the response, I just chose a few examples from the simulation. There are actually, hundreds of different types of responses cells could have. I chose some that might be kind of familiar to you, or things that show up a lot. Again, there's an online simulation that will take you through each of these different types of responses. I don't have any questions for you to answer for these. What I want you to do instead is describe the response. What is this cellular response for testosterone, for Viagra, to create a muscle contraction, for triggering cell reproduction, which can lead to cancer? So I just want a description of each one of these in your notebook. So you write down cellular responses, A with the heading, what it does, using again the simulation. So what does testosterone do as a cause as a response, and then go to B, cholera, write it down, which is actually CAMP, which is cyclic AMP, and then on the simulation, what does it do? So each of these, as I said, is going to be part of what you record in your notebook, not something I talk through in this vodcast. So the next thing you need to do is close down this vodcast and then go to the PowerPoint link directly below it so that you can start on watching these simulations and recording all the answers to the questions for each of the 3 steps of cell signaling.